Eventually, the people in Britain became so outraged by what was happening in the Caribbean that the slave trade was abolished in 1807. But the wealth of the fledgling empire didn't come from slavery alone. There were riches of a different kind to be found on the other side of the world. In the 18th century, this was the home of India's ruling dynasty. The first British visitors were awestruck by what they found.
Places like this must have been absolutely amazing to encounter. You'd arrived from somewhere cold and bleak in the Northern Hemisphere, and one can only imagine what effect it must have had upon some young lad on the make. There was a throne somewhere in here. The Emperor's throne, the Peacock throne, which was encrusted with jewels, including the Koh-i-Noor diamond, and an inscription on the wall, oh, that's it up there, in Arabic, which says, if there be paradise on earth, this is it. The effect must have been astonishing.
The earliest Britons in India were traders, men who'd gone there for spices, cotton, calicos, and indigo. The East India Company, which soon dominated trade, raised its own army of local troops. In 1744, a young man arrived in India to work as a clerk for the company. His name was Robert Clive. Ambitious, short-tempered, and impatient, Clive could see that wielding a sword was a faster route to riches than pushing a pen.
Clive taught himself to be a soldier. He learned, for example, that the best way to repel troops mounted on elephants, should you ever need to know, is to fire a volley of shots at the animals until they stampede. But his greatest talent of all was, in his own words, for politics, chicanery, intrigue, and the Lord knows what.
At the Battle of Plassey in 1757, Clive outwitted the ruler of the state of Bengal, a man who had dared to challenge the power of the East India Company. Clive then walked into the prince's treasury and coolly helped himself to a fortune. He then shipped it in a fleet of 75 barges to the company's headquarters in Calcutta.
Soon afterwards, a new word entered the English language. It was a Hindi word, loot. When Clive returned to England, he was met with the characteristic British disdain for men who make their money in a hurry. But when hauled before Parliament, he simply said An opulent city lay at my mercy. Its vaults were thrown open to me alone, piled on either hand with gold and jewels. Mr. Chairman, at this moment, I stand astonished at my own moderation.
With wealth came power. The East India Company gradually took control of huge swathes of the land. The company men were the new princes of India. They built themselves great palaces in the British style on Calcutta's main street. Many of them still stand today. As for Clive, he became governor of Bengal.
So what had begun in plunder had ended in government, and so it was to prove right across the world. It was the greed of Robert Clive and men like him which built Britain an empire. What's that? What is this?
Tamarind.
Tamarind.
Ah, tamarind.
18th century India provided Britain with a spectacular array of goods.
Sheer variety. I mean, of course, I have no idea what most of these things are. There's an awful lot of this yellow stuff. I wonder what it is.
It was the spice trade that had brought early travellers to India. Chilies, pepper, even turmeric are familiar tastes now, but in the early days of empire, they were an exotic luxury.
Pretty good. Crikey, it is. Quite strong.
India offered Europe a whole new world of taste and colour.
Must be the pepper.
And it wasn't just spices, but fabrics and furniture too. A network of global commerce was bringing the cultures of distant lands closer together.
Mind you, there's a bit of a traffic jam here. Sorry.
It's no surprise to us now that spices come from India. But there was one Indian product that became so familiar, it's hard to believe it didn't originate in England. Chintz.
Good morning. How do you do, Darshan?
Niranjan. He's
Niranjan, very
king.
good to see you.
King
He's
of
the king,
chintz.
you're the king of chintz.
And that's Monalina.
And you were a princess of chintz. Yeah, okay, good. Excellent.
Chintz is calico cloth that's been painted or printed with a wood block. Here on the outskirts of Calcutta, they've kept the traditional way of making it alive. They're still using techniques pioneered centuries ago.
I'll be honest with you, chintz has a very bad image in my mind. It's this sort of thing, you know, it's sort of thing grannies have on their sofas.
Yes.
I mean, that's not just what chintz
No,
is,
no,
is
no,
it?
no. This is what has been in later times adapted to the taste of the British people and has been done on the screen.
Oh, it's our fault.
Yeah, it's screen printed. So therefore, if you go back to approximately the 16th, 17th century, this is what is the original Indian chintz, which is sprinkled, sprayed, hand-painted and hand-block printed fabric.
Right.
So it's drawing with the pen and using natural dye process to fill in the various colors.
Britain first fell in love with chintz in the 17th century. Nothing that Britain produced then could match the rich patterns and colours at this Bengali textile.
Astonishingly labour-intensive, isn't it?
Yes, yes. You need more patience.
You certainly do. The worst thing is you can't make a single mistake ever. So you put all the colours on like this, and what's the finished product?
Yeah, I have some pieces. I'll show you this.
Okay.
These are the final product.
And this is your work, is it?
Yes, sir. This is my work.
This is a traditional
It's
pattern.
the traditional practice.
So is this the
Origins.
sort of thing that would
It's-
have
it's
been
or-
shipped to Britain and to Europe?
Yes.
Well, they're brilliant colours and a brilliant design, so thank you very much. You can see why people went crazy for it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
At one time, chintz made up 3/4 of India's exports. It became so popular that British clothmakers protested. In 1720, it was actually banned in Britain. And after that, the British started making their own. For more than 3 centuries, it was trade, not conquest, which brought new colonies into the empire, though it was often trade at the end of a gun or a sword. Private companies run by speculators and the odd crook took over huge chunks of foreign territory. They ran them as they liked, raising armies, doing deals with local rulers. The East India Company was the grandest of them. Canada was opened up by the Hudson's Bay Company, which traded in skins and furs. And the African Lakes Corporation bought and sold the bounty of swathes of Africa. Most were accountable to men sitting in offices thousands of miles away. At the heart of empire was the City of London, the centre of a spider's web of global trade. This was where money was made, goods bought and sold. At the London Metal Exchange, they've been doing business in this way for over 200 years.
It all looks utter chaos down there with people shouting and making strange gestures and talking into 2 or 3 telephones at the same time. But behind it all is an important clue about why Britain became such a powerful force in the days of the empire.
On floors like this, traders speculated on tin from Malaya, cotton from India, wool from Australia, gold from South Africa. From the 17th century, Britain took the lead in global banking, finance, and insurance. City bankers and merchants made London the pivot of the world's entire commercial system. And London held that lead well into the 20th century.